Hey everybody, we're about ready to get started with my April office hours. If somebody wouldn't mind just dropping something in the chat, let me know that you can hear me, you can see me. I had an issue last time I did this where there was a little bit of a audio video sync issue that was going on with the with the full camera view like this that you see right now. Think I got that figured out. Only way I really know is by getting feedback from you though, because I can't watch this while I'm actually streaming it. So bit of a live stream noob here. So yeah, just see something in the chat. Just see that people can both see and hear me. My volume is quite low. I wonder if other people are saying that too. Kurt, so if I see one person says my volume's low, everything sounds perfect, great. So Daniel, you might just need to turn your volume up a little bit here. Did a mic check before we started this and everything seemed okay. So hopefully everything's great. But I see other people are saying it's good. So for those of you who are new, welcome. If you're watching this recorded and you're not watching it live, welcome to you as well. I do this, all good, Daniel. I do this, trying to do this, I do this on a monthly basis. I do this on the third Wednesday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern time, which I believe is 4 p.m. GMT or UTC. My goal here is to just kind of share a little bit of what the biggest news that I've been following in the Microsoft 365 space that I think that you should know, or sorry, the Microsoft 365 development space that I think that you should be aware of. And then also I'm going to share a little bit of that, but then I also want to answer any questions that you have. I only had one question that was submitted to me ahead of time. And in fact, let me just make sure that I have those the chat up as well, just to make sure that I can see any questions that pop up here. There we go. So that's what I end up doing with this. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into this stuff in my presentation or my slides that I want to show you. I'm going to go ahead and dive into this right now. So let me switch over to my screen here and let's bring me up. Oh, I'm in the corner there. Let's put me over there. Makes it a little bit easier. Oh, gotta bring me back. Where'd I go? Bring me back. Where am I? There I am. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of dive into this. I'm going to cover three main topics today. So I'm going to cover the SharePoint framework, some stuff about Microsoft Teams. I don't have anything specific about SharePoint embedded, but I will talk a little bit about it, and then some Microsoft Graphy kind of stuff, and then handle any of your questions that you may have as well. So let me go ahead and get started with this. I have a bunch of links that I'm going to share with you too along the way. So first thing real quick is let's just look at the State of the Union of the SharePoint framework. Current version that we're still on, version 1.18.2. That's the current production version. We've been on this for a little while, so I'm not going to spend any time here. If you're interested in learning, anything about what's going on with the SharePoint framework, I'll go ahead and drop a link. Oh, that's not correct. There we go. Grab that link and drop that in the chat here. This is the latest version of the SharePoint framework where you can take a look at it. I've got an unboxing video on YouTube. That's the link that I just dropped, where I kind of walk through what's new and what's interesting. I haven't seen anything that Microsoft has, anything that's really drastic about the next version. Actually, let me switch over to that real quick. I haven't seen anything drastic about the next version that Microsoft is releasing related to the SharePoint framework. So I'm not sure if we're going to see it. Like, there's nothing that's really all that big. It's in the latest version of it. There's one or two things they've added kind of in the timeline, as you see here from 1.19. Let me grab all these links and drop these guys in. We've got the SPFx, the beta for 1.19. Beta 0 is in there. I've got a link for bot-enabled ACEs, and I've also got a link for an article or for a tutorial on something new. So let me drop all these links in. There we go. So just dropped in. Oh, I missed one. Where did the other one go? ACEs. Wait, is that all of them? 1, 2, 3. ACEs, beta 0, data visualization, enabled ACEs. This one is what I wanted. Let's drop this one in too. Okay. So a couple things with this. The beta, they released the beta about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago or so. It's beta 0. There's nothing really interesting in it except for there's one thing I guess that they've added. And that is the ability for us to, a new template for adaptive card extensions that allows us to do a little bit of like simple charting. You basically give it a series of data and it can do a little line graph chart. It's early, it's a preview, so we'll see where they end up going with this. They give us more capabilities with this, but it's a nice little data visualization that they've added to the product here. That we can potentially take advantage of in the future. They've also added some other stuff too that's relatively new and just in the timeline. So support for bot-enabled adaptive card extensions. I got a link to that, which I've dropped in the chat. And the designer for Viva Connections cards for adaptive cards. The other big things that I've seen in the latest version that they've done is they've decoupled some of the dev tooling from the actual release itself. So you'll find some packages in a beta project. You'll see some of the packages in the dev dependencies are referencing a version that used to match the exact version we were on, but now you'll see some that are a little bit ahead, like 1.20. They've just said that they're making some improvements to it, and they've also committed to making an update to the docs to kind of explain what they're doing. They haven't done either one in a couple, I guess it's now about a month. So kind of waiting to see what they do there. Part of this, they did upgrade the version of Webpack to Webpack version 5. That's new, but it doesn't really, there's not a whole lot that's going to do for us. One thing that they did do that I have noticed is they've actually addressed a lot of missing things on property pane controls. So specifically, they've added things like about, actually, let me pull up the release notes here. Here we go. So we have in the release notes, we have a couple things that they've added here. So new features. We've got, oh, here you go. Here's a view of what that card looks like that I was telling you about. So this is the data visualization for the card template. And you can see where you got a little stock price or you have multiple series that are on it as well. And then here's some stuff that they've added right here. So they've added in on the property pane controls. We got things like ARIA labels and descriptions were missing. They've added in some disabled properties to like the icon picker and the thumbnail picker. They've also added in an alt tag for the choice group for images, and then an inline label as well for the toggle. So they've added in a couple little things there that for the property pane controls that were some gaps. I noticed a bunch of these bugged some of them, and it looks like they found additional ones and they just kind of got out in front of it and went ahead and added in to have a little bit more of a focus on accessibility concerns. I mentioned this data visualization card. This is the link that I posted in the chat a minute ago. This is a tutorial that was mostly written by this guy Mohan, which is the engineer on it. But I was involved in kind of editing it and also improving it a little bit. And it walks through how you can go about creating one of these using this new template, the data visualization card template. And once you add that, you can see you get like this standard kind of a visualization. How does it work? Well, you are going to have this same thing. You're doing a basic card view, and now you can pass in this new thing of a data visualization card view parameters, and it allows you to specify the kind of component. So in this case here, we have a component called a card bar, and it has a title associated with it. And in the body, you tell it the component name that you want to use, which is a data visualization. The kind is a line type. and then you have a series of data. So this implies we're going to have other options, maybe bar charts, maybe pie charts, etc. And you also have the ability to define things like a header and also a footer. And I think I have a picture of that too. So if you have a header and a footer, then you'll see the chart goes side by side with the header and the footer, where the footer allows us to define things like quick views, to where I click on this and it opens up another visualization. You're going to see more about this coming soon. Right now, it's fairly basic stuff that Microsoft has provided with this. Lucas Pio, I see your question about Teams Toolkit and SPFx. I'll come back to that in just a little bit. Let me run through some of the news, and then we'll talk about some of that stuff. They've talked about some of the other things you see down here at the very bottom: Copilot integration scenarios aligning with Teams packaging, improved experience for third-party cookies that are being blocked, tooling improvements. I haven't seen a whole lot there. They've talked about it on their bi-weekly calls that they do for the community, but they don't do a whole lot more than that. So we're still kind of waiting to see where they go with this. Let's talk a little bit about Microsoft Teams. What's new with Teams? Well, a couple things. We have a new API-based message extensions in the Teams developer portal. This is, let me grab that link so you can have that more easily. Let me drop these two in here. So there's one, and then what is the other one? The API. Oh, I jumped my slides too quick. Let's go back. The Teams Toolkit. I wanted this one. And then I also wanted this one. Yeah, I want that link. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. There we go. Data was, yeah, so those three links. So a couple things with this. So today when we build our, what are they called? Our message extensions. We have the ability to use the bot framework or the Teams AI library to build our message extension. There's a new model where it's going to allow us to use an API-based one as long as the API is based or is implemented using the Open API standard. This allows us to go into the Teams developer portal, add an entry for the API, exposing different methods that are available on it. And it's kind of like a no-code way of creating a message extension. There are some limitations to it. We can't use it for Copilot plugins. It doesn't support any kind of an authentication scenario. There's a couple limitations to it, but then in the most recent post that I'm linking to here, they say, hey, make sure you pay attention to build. So the conference coming up later in May, about a month from now, they've got some stuff that seems like they may be giving us an update on this with some new things that they're covering with this to make it even easier to build our message extensions or to implement them. They also did an update to the Teams Toolkit version 5.6. That's not new. What's new though is that this link that I'm giving you, there's a guy named John Miller who is from Microsoft, who is essentially the owner of the Teams Toolkit, and he did a 3-minute video that kind of walks through all the stuff that's new and what you could take advantage of. There's two other things you should be aware of as well. One is that the CLI that we were using, it used to be called the SPFx CLI. That's been renamed. So we have a new version 3. It has now been renamed to the Teams app. The CLI is now called Teams app. And so you don't automatically get it. The rename isn't automatic. Like if you're currently using Teams FX CLI, you can uninstall it because you're going to have to install the Teams app CLI. It's a brand new package that you're going to have to use. So that's where you go npm install at Microsoft Teams app-CLI. You're probably going to install this globally as well. So you push a -G on the end of that. Another thing that's kind of continuing with an announcement that Microsoft made last summer in 2023, and that's they were standardizing a lot of their names of their different products on a new domain called cloud.microsoft. I think that's right. All of a sudden I'm looking at that and that makes me, I kind of get almost a feel for that, that may be, I may have that backwards. Oh, just lost everything. There we go. Here, this is the link about the API message extensions, kind of walks through. I didn't show that. The new domain, yeah, cloud.microsoft, that's correct. So what this is that if you've created like a Teams app, you are probably right now in your web app, for the tab-based app that you've created with a web app for Microsoft Teams, you may be using the X-frame options or CSP headers, the content security policy, that says I'm only going to allow this page to load within an iframe that is hosted on a page at teams.microsoft.com. That's what we currently use today. Good way for you to make sure that somebody isn't using that web app or that web page outside of Teams. You want it to only be used inside of Teams. Well, one of the things that they are doing is they're standardizing their domains for a lot of their cloud, specifically their user that are primarily user used. How do you say that? I'm trying to think about how to say that. Where it's going to all be on a domain called cloud.microsoft. So we're going to have teams.cloud.microsoft instead of it being teams.microsoft.com. This is going to happen at some point in June or July. You want to make sure that you are ahead of this. So here it's like your app used to be using this, everything worked, but now it's going to start opening up in teams.cloud.microsoft. You just want to make sure you update those domains to make sure all those changes are done. I think they said in here that this is going to happen in, I thought they gave us a specific date. Let me see. Is it June? Yeah, so it's going to go live in June of 2024. So we got a couple more months. All I would say is just you can go in and you can add a new just add a comma and then throw the domain on the end of it, because you can usually use like a CSP policy or the X-frame options. You can put multiple domains in there. I would just put teams.microsoft.com as another one in like a CSV list. Later, you'll be able to remove your teamsmicrosoft.com. Okay. Let's see. So what else do I have here with the slides? Oh, I totally messed up that part. Let's get that fixed real quick. There we go. Now I'm in good shape. All right. So what else do we have here? Two more things I want to share with you. This is relatively new-ish. And that is, we have a thing called the sites.selected permission. Oh, let's see. So someone asked a question here. Some ordinary user, will they extend the domain name changes to SharePoint at some point? That's my expectation. Some ordinary user is that they will extend those changes to all properties at some point in the near future. So all cloud properties. In the future. I don't know when that's going to be, but that's what my expectation is. So there's two other things I want to cover here before we start diving into, questions. Trying to get through the news in the first like 20 minutes of our office hours. Let me jump over. Let's first talk about the Pages API, because the second part about sites.selected really goes into somebody's question they passed in, and I'm just going to apologize. I always have a hard time pronouncing his name, but Slovaks, if I know I'm mispronouncing your name, and I don't think you were going to be able to join us live, but you're going to watch the recording, it's your question. So I'll come back to you in just a minute. Let's look at the API changes here. Okay. So what this is that Microsoft has released this new API called the Pages API for Microsoft Graph. And what this is going to allow us to do is going to allow us to programmatically interact with SharePoint pages and news posts. And it's going to allow us to do things like get a list, create, edit, publish, and delete pages with this API. Now, right now with their V1, I want you to read this one. It's kind of interesting here, where they say, like, with the V1 release, we're introducing a targeted scope of features based on comprehensive research, use case analysis, and product scoping. You can also go through and work with some of the 14 out-of-the-box web parts that we get from Microsoft, in addition to any third-party web parts. And they list them out. Now, why do I just call this one sentence out? I will tell you that this has been an area of that's hotly contested by the community. There's a lot of people in the community who have been waiting for this for a long time, have given Microsoft a lot of feedback for a very long time. And let's just say that I think that the implementation of V1 it doesn't really do what a lot of people were hoping for and been asking for. So when they say comprehensive research, use case analysis, and project scoping, I think I might add, based on the conversations I've been in, is that there's a lot of stuff that they didn't do with V1. So at least we have a start. At least we have something that is finally reached production. And we have like something that's kind of standardized so far. My hope is that we will see some roadmap stuff with this and that they will talk a little bit more about it. Maybe at the upcoming conference, the Microsoft 365 Community Conference in Orlando. If you're going to be there, let me know. I'd love to meet up. If you're thinking about it, then I've got a registration code for you that you can use and save $100 off your registration if you use Connell 100. I'll be there. I've got a breakout session on using the Teams AI library for message extensions and bots in Teams apps. And then I've also got a full day workshop on Friday about building all sorts of things with Microsoft Teams. It's not a workshop in the sense that you're going to build stuff with me. But what I am going to do is I'm going to do a lot of like instructor-led demos. And if you want to try and follow along, you can, but it's going to be hard to kind of keep up, especially with conference Wi-Fi. I'm going to give you everything that I do at the end of the session. You're going to be able to download the code, the slides, and I'm also going to give everybody who attends that workshop access to my next Teams on-demand course that I'm working on right now. All right, I'll come back to that in just a little bit. I saw somebody had a question about it, so I'll explain more about that in just a bit. Okay, now, so that's some stuff with the Pages API. Hopefully we'll see some more about it, but I put some links in the chat where you could take a look at that and you can learn more if you're interested. Let me talk about the other piece here that we have about sites.selected. Now, I had a question here from Slovaks about this sites.selected. Let me give you a little bit of kind of full context over what you would want to do here, because he gave me two questions, and I'll read back those questions in a minute. But let me explain kind of where we are with this. In 2001, and about this time 3 years ago, Microsoft released a new thing called sites.selected, a new scope that we have for Microsoft Graph. Now, the goal of this, what we had previously was that if we wanted to do anything with an app that was going to talk to the that was going to talk to talk to SharePoint through Microsoft Graph, we gave our app a permission, but that permission applied to the entire tenant. So we would give it a permission and say like, let's just say like write to a list. Well, that permission was going to give that permission was granted to that app for all lists and all site collections, or the right permission would be there for everything across all site collections. And that's not what a lot of people wanted. People wanted to have a lot more of a focused thing. Oh, Slovak's great. Good to see you're here. People want to have a little bit more focus. They want to say, I want to give this app permission, but not to the whole tenant and all site collections in it. Instead, I want to do it just for the specific specific site, or like a handful of sites. So what Microsoft did about 3 years ago is they introduced a new scope on Microsoft Graph called sites.selected. Now, when they introduced this back in 2001, I think it was February 2001, it only applied to app-only scenarios, meaning that our app was going to obtain an access token from Azure AD or Microsoft Entra, and what it would do is that when it goes to get that token, it then is going to be operating on behalf of as an app, but not in the context of a user. But what it did allow me to do is it allowed me to focus and say that this app could only have these permissions on this particular site. Okay. Now, the way we did that, the way we granted it that permission is, as you can see at the bottom of this slide in the blue area, let me pull my laser pointer up here. Let me pull my laser. Thank you. There we go. So the way that, oh great, now my laser pointer won't work. So the way it would work is I would go to the sites collection and pass in the ID of the site on the graph.microsoft.com and go to the permissions endpoint, which is a new endpoint, and I could add in a new permission. Now, for an app-only permission, I would specify a role to be either write, read, or owner. So owner being I have full control. And what you're doing is you're giving this intra application access to this site collection with the role that you define. Okay, so this app could now operate without any user interaction and have those permissions on that site collection, right? And you could do that in multiple site collections if you wanted. Now, what just got announced just recently, is they've added in another capability, and now we can have delegated permissions or delegated scope. This is what you see on the slide. This is what's considered app plus user. So when I first go through and I grant my app sites.selected, just like the app only option, when the permission was granted, the app would have no access to any site collections. It was just says, I got the sites.selected permission. Now what I can do with the delegated permission is I do the exact same thing that I do with the app only permission, where I'm going to go to the same endpoint you see here on the slide, the permissions endpoint for a particular site collection, and I'm going to grant a specific app. So that's the same thing you see down here on in my slide right here, 89EA. So that's the intra application. I'm going to grant it a specific role. And if I'm using delegated, the app plus user, it can be a read, write, manage, or full control. These permissions are in line with what you're familiar with like working with SharePoint. So when you grant a user, do they have read permissions, write permissions, manage permissions, which is kind of like managing lists and the designer roles in SharePoint, and full control, which means it can do anything. You're granting that app those permissions in the scope of this particular site. But because it's a app plus user, it is the app can only have the permissions. It can only do the things that the current user can do. So it's not like a user who's a reader can use this app to do stuff that only a manager could do, or could add data, read and write data, or have full control over the site. It is the lowest permission is between the app and the user is what the app can do on behalf of the user. Okay, so it's the lowest common denominator. All right, it's not a way to bypass any user permissions. If you wanted to do that, that's where app only comes into play, because then it's not factoring in the user. So you might ask, well, what happens if the app has both a site.selected scope for app only and for app plus user? Because when you look at the code at the bottom here of the post that I'm making to go grant that permission, you're not seeing anything that really indicates that this is app plus user or app only. And that's true, because what defines that is the access token that your app obtained. If your app goes and gets an access token as an app-only access token using the client credentials flow, where it uses a client ID and a client certificate, which is what's required for SharePoint Online when you want to do app-only, or if it obtains an access token on behalf of the current user, that's going to dictate the access token. How it was obtained is going to dictate if it's app only or if it's app plus user. So you get both of those options. So that's what's new here. This is a big deal. Now, the stuff that we don't see yet, and Microsoft has said that they're working on some things, are a little more granular scopes, like giving us maybe this permissions endpoint all the way down to, say, a particular list or a particular document library. And that way you could just give an app permissions to read and write to a specific list. Right now, the most granular scope that we have is a site collection. We can't go down to the actual artifacts down inside of a site collection. I was trying to think of another word than containers, because that's now a real thing thanks to SharePoint Embedded. Wish they'd come up with different names here. So this has nothing to do with SharePoint Embedded. SharePoint Embedded works totally differently than that. Now, Solex had two questions here. So first question was, I'd like to hear about a real life example for the usage of site.selected in a delegated scenario. Is this something that we can use in a SharePoint framework development projects? So the answer is kind of, well, not really, because if you think about it, I don't think you're gonna be able to do that because the app is gonna have to authenticate. I mean, maybe, you know what? I haven't thought about that actually. Now that you asked that. What I don't know is, can you ahead of time, can this ID actually that you use to have this permission, could this be the SharePoint Online, the special SharePoint Online intra app that we get with, that we use for like the AAD HTTP client, or the one that we use to talk to Microsoft Graph? Maybe you can. Maybe you could do that with app plus user. You definitely can't do it with app only, but you might be able to do it with app plus user, because you can't grant it. You would never grant an app only permission to that special SharePoint Online app. So you might be able to do that. So to finish to give you that entire thought here is that I could go create a SharePoint framework component that would use the site.selected specifically to call a particular site by ID and read and write to a SharePoint list. Well, I guess either before or after that app is deployed, I would have to have a manual step where I go in and I add a permission for that SharePoint Online app to grant it app plus user of one of these permissions. And then the user using the app would then have access to be able to make changes to it. I don't know if that is entirely possible. I have to test it out, but I think theoretically that should work. If it doesn't, then you would end up having to create your own app to go do the authentication to go grab that. But I think that might work. I'm trying to think back to a demo that a guy at Microsoft, Patrick Rogers, did. I remember I was watching this demo that he did just recently, and I can't remember if that's what he showed or not. I was half paying attention, so sorry. I was listening to it, but I was multitasking. And now that you ask, I'm not sure. But I mean, I guess the real example for this though is that with a site with a user, you're going to have the app's going to have to be able to have access to it. So I think that you could, yeah. So I think it could work. So you said, if you remember correctly, at the beginning we had read write full, and that was only followed by making usable the manage role, and finally they've been announced support for delegated app. Principal scenario is I'm confused as to what the manage role is used for. Manage, so owner is like everything. Manage is for like managing lists and the designer role of like creating pages. Full control has access to do everything. So there was no like that manage didn't really exist on app only because app only had full control for everything. Daniel says, is there a tool or UI to allow a non-dev tenant admin to grant permissions for an application on a given site collection? Non-techie customers might struggle to grant permission to sites otherwise. So there is no GUI for this. So no, there's no UI for this. However, I don't know if anybody knows off the top of their head. I can't tell everybody who's connected to the chat, but you might be able to do this with the CLI for Microsoft 365. I just saw somebody post something. Let me see if that's. Let me go back to my browser. Yeah, for an application for a given site. Yep. So let me check one thing. Anthony. Oh, thanks, Anthony. Anthony says there are P&P commandlets, so you could do that with PowerShell. But I wonder, CLI for Microsoft. There we go. And let's look at commands for SharePoint. Wasn't there one just for a site? Is it SPO site? App permission. I bet that's it. Yeah, that looks like it's, I don't know what that is. No, not get. How about add? That might be it. Yeah, so you add a permission, you pass in the site because there's the site itself, and then the permission is read, so that's really the role. And then the display name is the name of the app, but you really also you have to pass in. So you could do the display name, or you could do the ID. So display name or the client ID of the app. So either one. So yeah, it looks like you could use the CLI for Microsoft 365 to do that, or as Anthony said, you could use the PMP PowerShell commandlet. Yeah, and so Daniel, so both Anthony and Slovaks are both saying that. So I would trust both of them. They both know what they're talking about. And it looks like it too from the CLI for this. Cool. So actually another question here. You said, is the manage permission level suitable for app only permission scenarios too? What would happen if manage role in an app only scenario? Here's what I found. Yeah, so no, I think I kind of went over that. What you're asking is, can I use manage for app only? And the answer is no. The only three that are available for app only are read, write, and owner. Whereas for app plus user, it's read, write, manage, and full control. I don't really understand why they didn't do the same for both of them. But they didn't. So it is what it is. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see. So I've got one question. I don't think I have anything else on my slides. Nope, I don't. So let me just say this in case people end up dropping off. The next office hours is set for May 15th, which is the third Wednesday of the month. This is right after the conference in Orlando, the Microsoft 365 community conference that is the last week of April, beginning of May. So we'll have some stuff to definitely talk about in that one. I'll have a link. I have a special link that I've set up for the office hours that you can use to make your life easier in tracking, when the next office hours is coming up. Let me put that in the chat. It's just vtns.io/office hours, office-hours. Right now it points to the one we're watching right now. When this one's over, I go right in and I'll update the link to point to the next one. So it kind of rotates. You can always have one that says the current one, and it's almost always like the very next one that's coming. I just didn't change it for this in case people are having a hard time finding it. It's like, well, just go to that link and it'll take you to today's. Makes it easy. So the next one will be on May 15th. I'm curious, for those of you who are watching this, give me some feedback on this. Okay, put it in the chat, put it in the comments. I stopped sending out a regular email just to remind you, hey, office hours is coming up. And instead what I've done is, let me switch off this. Instead, what I've decided to do is I've got it. I always post the next one up on YouTube, and YouTube's got the whole setup to where you can click on you can hit the thumbs up on it so you get notified. But then also there's a notify me button that will send you an email when the event is coming up and when I go live, so you can be notified when the office hours goes live. To me, I think that's a good enough kind of heads up that, hey, office hours is coming. And I also post about it in the Discord channel, the Voitanos Discord channel, which you can learn more. You go to voitanos.io/discord. And but with that being, and from there you can download an ICS file. I have a Discord. The Discord event has an ICS file that you can download and import into your calendar. And I'm at the bottom of all of my emails that I send out to, and all the newsletters that I send out. There's also some information on when the next office hours is, with a link to where you can go to the entry and on the YouTube channel where you can then click notify me. But I wonder, I've had a few people ask about it. I know one or two of you who are with me right now, you actually brought this up. Do you want an email notification like the Monday before the office hours? In the past, I always did one on a Monday and like a week and a half early, and then just 3 days early. But I don't want to I don't want to spam people. So one thing I can do is I can definitely set it up to just say, I'll subscribe to be notified whenever this is done. I don't know if I'll do like I'm not going to auto add people. I don't want to auto add people to that email, but I can set it up to where you can be notified when the next one's coming if people want to rely on getting it through their email. Okay. So yeah. So Rick, I recognize you, Rick. So I know Rick, you definitely asked about it. So you'd like that. I think another one was, I don't want to call him out, but there was somebody named, letter of first name starts with a K. I think that I don't know if you might like it, but if other words work, yeah, Kurt. So just need to know where to check. Oh, this works. Email notification, a few days, good reminder. Okay. You know what? Okay. I appreciate the feedback. I will add something to go through and to do that where you can add in. As long as you have an ICS, you can enter, just have it on your calendar. You know what? I could just do the ICS file and put a link in the email to where you can then add it and be notified of when the next one is. So just for kicks, let me just show you one thing. Make sure everybody is aware of one thing. Let me switch back to my screen. This is the Discord channel. So if you come down into the office hours section, actually, you know what? Everybody should have access to this, but I wonder, does everybody have access to it? No. Oh, I know what. But if you come over here to the events, so if you come to our events, you'll see the one that's happening. So like for the next one, you can come to this, select it, and you can say add to calendar, and you can download an ICS file just like this. So in the Discord server, you can learn more about the Discord server if you just go to my website, voitanos.io, you click community, and then here's a link to where you can join the Discord server. And then once you're in, you can see a list of events and then say, I want the ICS file for the next one. You see, I've already got the YouTube live already set up for the next one as well. Okay. Let's see, go back to my chat. So let's see. Yeah, and Lucas, I hope you're still around because I saw your question. I will be happy to answer that. So Lucas had a question. You intend to take an online course on the Teams toolkit, similar to the SharePoint Framework course model. You said that as a question. So I think you're asking. I think you're asking. Do I intend to create an online course about the Teams toolkit similar to what I've done with the SharePoint framework? And the answer is kinda. Let me show you what I'm doing. So let me switch back over to my screen real quick. If you come over here to courses, you see there's a SharePoint framework section, then there's a section here for Teams. So right now what I'm doing is with the team, I have an accelerator program that I run. This is a bigger course. A couple of people who are on the chat right now have actually been through this. But this is a multi-week based accelerator. And the goal that I have with this is to really have a much more high touch to work with customers directly and teach them the Microsoft Teams app development. If you're interested in learning more about this, there's a little 3-minute video up here at the top that you can watch that I kind of explain what this is. There's a bunch of featured things that we go over. I would recommend that you come down to the very bottom and look at all the testimonials that I've received from people who've said some great things, including, I know Kurt is one of our, is joined us right now. Kurt gave me a really good quote, as did, where is he? There's Don. I saw Don was in the chat as well. So Don did it as well. Don gave me a great comment. And then Adam also gave me a really good one just recently as well. That had some great comments as well. So this is a cohort style where we do a live class every Wednesday for 2 hours where I teach. So those Kurt and Don and anybody else who's done this so far, based on all y'all's feedback, I've changed the schedule a little bit. But I teach for 2 hours on Wednesday. We teach a topic and then I assign some homework. It's totally optional, but that gives you, we will then meet the following Monday for office hours for 2 hours. And that's only available to people who are in the cohort, max of 15 people. And you can see it's done a pretty good job of selling out as well. I've got 9 seats available to that as well. If you want to learn more about that, please reach out to me. Send me an email. My email is andrew@voitanos.io. or just join the waiting list. You'll get an email back asking you to kind of share some context, and I will follow up with you as well. And I'd love to talk to you about it and make sure that you're a good fit for it, but also make sure that that you would get what you're looking for out of it. The other thing, though, is that right now I don't have any self-paced courses on Teams app development. They're planned. I plan on doing it. I'm actually working on them right now. I'm working on a bunch of different courses right now. I'm working on one on SharePoint Embedded and working on one on a couple for Teams as well. I'm not going to do one specifically on the Teams toolkit, but all of them will use the Teams toolkit. So I'm going to have one on building tabs, both personal apps and channel apps, one on bots, one on message extensions, and then there'll be a bunch of other stuff as well. So the best thing I would say is that to stay in touch and keep in touch on what I'm doing with this, check out my my newsletter. So subscribe to my newsletter, because that's where I'll be communicating everything first. I'll also put it on some of the social medias and stuff. So follow me on LinkedIn. You can get all those links from the bottom of my site. Kurt, thank you very much for the comments about it. I appreciate that. West Coast guy, you don't have access to the Discord forum. Everybody has access to it. Everybody has access to it. There are a couple things that are available just for students or for students of particular courses. The office hours one that I showed you a second ago in Discord, that is available for the ultimate bundle, the students of my Mastering SharePoint Framework Ultimate Bundle, and students who have gone through my Teams App Dev Accelerator. It's a place for them to ask questions. They get like a priority response because they're some of my most loyal, my best customers. It's not available to everybody. So those are the first questions I like to tackle when we do our office hours. However, you can always go in and jump in on the chat and ask a question, and I'll answer those. That's what I've been doing today as well. So I don't want to say you're missing out. You're just not getting the priority kind of access. And I'll be completely honest. I mean, if some people have bought my courses and they've supported the work that I've done, I owe them something, and I owe them a lot more attention to someone who has supported some of the work that I've done. But I do want to reach out more people, and that's why I do these office hours public. I moved these office hours from being a private thing just for those students to being more public. So students of my courses get first priority to get their questions answered in these office hours, and then I do it for everybody else. So West Coast guy, you can definitely go in and join the Discord. There are forums there to ask questions as well, even if you're not a student of one of my courses. Don't know how to say your name, Mindkilla. You said, trying to show a SharePoint online page in a task pane SharePoint add-in, and I end up with the following behavior. The frame loads and a new browser window opens and navigates to... So I'm guessing there was more to that. So the problem that you may be having with that, so it sounds like you have a problem. I'm guessing one of the reasons why you may be having a problem with it is because you're not getting any, you're having an authentication issue. And that's because the app has to log into SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online doesn't want to run in an iframe. And that's what a task pane is in all of the Office clients. So I don't think that's going to work. I think what you need to do instead is, because remember, the task pane is going to only give you like a small rectangle, and SharePoint Online is not designed for that small little rectangle experience. If you're looking to, it depends on what your scenario is, but if you're trying to show like data from a list or to interact with a SharePoint list or to work, then you would want to use like Microsoft Graph or the SharePoint REST API to reach out and to get data back and forth from your task pane PowerPoint add-in. If you want to show a web part, that's not going to work. That's simply not going to work. And it's because of the authentication piece. SharePoint just is, I think SharePoint's got a CSP or X-frame headers that says it doesn't want to run in an iframe for just general SharePoint pages. And plus, even if it didn't do that, I'd question the use case, because again, you've got that limited width vertical experience with a task pane that you can't change the size of it. You would always get the Microsoft 365 suite bar at the top, the navigation on the left-hand side. You're always going to get a lot of stuff. So I'm not sure that would be having a SharePoint Online page for your task pane is going to be a great experience. That's it for me. I'm all out of questions. Does anybody have? If anybody has a question, please feel free to post it in the chat. I'll just share one thing that since the last time we got together, proper web app is the answer. You bet. Absolutely, mine kill it. I would definitely use a web app, a standard just web app to host your task pane, because you're also going to want, well, first, for a bunch of reasons. First of all, you're going to have a better experience. You're going to have a better UX experience that you have control over. That's one. Two, you're going to have you're not going to be getting all the page weight that SharePoint Online has at every page. Tons of JavaScript, the SharePoint framework runtime. You don't need and want all of that loading in that task pane. It's going to be a really slow task pane. Consider that task pane has to load and initialize within 5 seconds, or the Office client's going to throw an error and say, sorry, this add-in doesn't work. A web app, I think, is just a better experience. And that's what I think that's definitely the direction you should go in. So let me go back to what I was saying a second ago. Since we last got together, I was at Microsoft. Microsoft had me create a course and teach a 2-day immersive course to a bunch of customers related to SharePoint Embedded. Great experience. Had a really good interactions with a lot of customers who were there. A lot of really good questions. I'd keep an eye on SharePoint Embedded. It is a really cool option for storing content for your custom apps. Specifically, I love the idea of using it as a data storage option for your Microsoft Teams apps, because some people, when they create Teams apps, are like, well, I want to store all my data in SharePoint because I've already got a SharePoint site. And it's like, well, yeah, that's great, but every place you install your app, like every channel, all the data is siloed just to that instance of the app inside of that site collection. There's no like global site collection that everybody can use easily. There are ways you can do it, but you're working too hard to make it work, in my opinion. However, you could do that if you were going to use SharePoint Embedded, and you could store all of the file-based content inside of a SharePoint Embedded container for your app, or multiple containers for your app. So that's one option. But then there's a lot of other really great options and opportunities for using SharePoint Embedded. It is one of the areas in the SharePoint's development space that in my 20 years, I've rarely seen the updates. I've rarely seen the, what do you call it? The interest and the excitement around something in the SharePoint space like I have with SharePoint Embedded. Kurt says, what are the latest pricing of SharePoint Embedded? I can show it to you, unless they've changed it. So if you go to AKA, I'll drop, when I get to this link, I'll drop it in the chat. If you go to the SharePoint developer documentation and go to SharePoint Embedded, and if you look under Terms of Service, and search for pricing. So here you go, payment terms. Grab that link, and I'll drop that in the chat for you. You pay on 3 different types of meters. You will pay based on the amount of storage, So this is in a gigabytes per day. So this is kind of like, it's a lot of way Azure does this. It's not exact. So at some point during the day, it does like a snapshot and says, how much storage are you using across all the containers for this app? And it says that's the amount, and it adds it all together, and that's the amount of gigabytes per day. So you get charged based on that. That is charged at a little less than 0.7 of a cent per gigabyte. You also pay, that number doesn't look, oh yeah, you pay based on API calls, and you're paying that much per API call from Microsoft Graph. So if your app is, when it's reading and writing data back to the containers, it's doing that using the Microsoft Graph. So you have to pay based on the number of API calls. And then furthermore, if you're doing data egress, pulling data out of SharePoint Embedded, you're also going to be paying that much per gigabyte of the data that is being taken out. So if you're like putting large files and downloading large files, it's going to be more expensive than if you were not. That data is only applicable. So a couple things about this: the Graph API transactions, it's only the API transactions that you make. So if your app, so for example, if your app shows a bunch of files from your SharePoint embedded container, and a user goes to open one of those files in in Word on their desktop client or Word in the web client, you only pay for the ones that you pulled out the data. You only pay for the API calls that you used to go call Graph to get that list to display it on your web app. But when Word desktop or Word, the web app, goes to open the file, you don't pay for that. That's Microsoft opening the file. If it's you as the developer opening the file and doing stuff, that's different. You pay for those. The data egress as well only applies to the data that you're pulling out, that your app is pulling out of the app. So like it's not, and they're keeping an eye on things like video streaming and stuff like that. But any time that your app is pulling that data out, that's the only thing that could be impacting it. You said pricing is for preview. Wonder if they plan to increase it. Don't know. They haven't said anything about that yet. The GA for SharePoint Embedded is, I don't think they've set a public date. I don't think they've set a public date for it, but there are two big conferences coming up. There's the Microsoft 365 Community Conference in Orlando in like 2 weeks. And then Microsoft Build is in Seattle. Actually, I think it's on one of the ones I opened up. Which one was that? Or one of the pages at the top. Build is May 21st through the 23rd. So those are two opportunities for them to go GA. That would be close to the time frame they shared back in November. So May looks like a pretty good bet based on what they've shared so far. But as far as like any updates to pricing, I haven't seen anything about it to where that's going to change. I don't see any other questions. And we are actually right at time. Look at that. We got less than a minute. I want to thank everybody for joining me for for my third new office hours. We're doing this as a live stream. Love to get your feedback. Anything that you liked, anything you didn't like, any constructive criticism. I'd love to hear anything that you've got. Please just drop them in the comments below. Only way I can make this better and improve upon it is with your feedback. Right now, my only action item of this is to create a way for people to sign up to email notifications when the next office hours is coming up. But I'll definitely do it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And I'll talk to you in a month-ish. Bye, everybody.